Hey everyone, welcome back to our another video. Today we have got something really exciting to dive into. So we are tackling a lab that involves exploiting a path traversal vulnerability. So grab your metaphorical elements, because we are going into the hacking trenches. So basically the goal of this lab is to exploit a path traversal vulnerability in an application. This vulnerability allows us to access files on the server that we should not be able to. So basically our job is to bypass security measures, specifically ones that block certain tricky sequences of correctors used in hacking attempts. So once we break through, we aim to retrieve sensitive information from the ATC password file. So basically this file contains essential user information on Unix and Linux systems. So getting access to it is like finding the keys to the kingdom. So this bug, like a crafty infiltrator, sneaks into unsuspecting systems. Let's unveil its secrets. Imagine you are in a digital maze trying to access files and directories. So basically that's precisely what hackers exploit in a path traversal bug. They navigate the system's pathways, aiming to break into secure walls. So path traversal is a vulnerability where an attacker manipulates file paths. For instance, a website might have a feature that allows users to view files. If not properly secured, a user can input something like secretspasswords.txt. If the application does not validate this input rigorously, it might display or even grant access to that file. Path traversal often targets functionalities like file download features, image loading scripts, or any place where a user interacts with file systems. Hackers cleverly exploit these functions, hoping to escape the designated confines and roam freely across sensitive data. Now, where is the bug commonly found? Think web applications, especially those with file download capabilities, content management systems, online forms with file upload options, and APIs handling file operations are prime targets. So basically these are like locked rooms. If a hacker finds a crack, they exploit it. The implications are enormous. An attacker could access confidential files, compromise user data, or even gain unauthorized system access. So basically it's like an intruder slipping into a high-security building unnoticed. Defending against path traversal requires meticulous input validation. If a user tries to access a file, ensure they are only navigating within the designated boundaries. Implement strong access controls and avoid user input in file paths whenever possible. So first thing first, I access the lab environment. Just log in and got myself set up. Easy peasy. Now the fun begins. We are exploring the application, trying to find that sweet spot, that one parameter that's vulnerable to local file inclusion, called as LFI. So we are like detectives here searching for clues. And after searching so many parameters, yeah, there it is, detected parameter. We suspect it might be the gateway. So we send a sneaky little request to the repeater tab in Burp Suite, testing it out with our LFI payload. But wait, what's this? A bad request in the response. That means our first attempt did not hit the jackpot. So time to move on, right? We are not giving up, though we try other parameters. Relentless in our pursuit, opening an image in a new tab, intercepting the request with Burp Suite, and then sending it to the repeater. Here comes the cool part. We play around the file name parameter. First attempt does not work. It's probably blocked or protected. But hey, we don't give up. We try another payload here. Bingo, it works. We hit the jackpot this time. The response, oh, it's golden. We get back sensitive info from the etc. password file, usernames, home directories, all the good stuff. The etc. password file is like the backbone of a Unix-based system. It contains user account details, each line representing a user. Let's break down this cryptic code you see here. So basically each line follows a pattern. The first part is the username followed by a cryptographic hash of the password, usually indicating that the password is stored in the shadow file for security, user ID, group ID, a brief description of the user or account, the home directory, and the shell. For instance, the line root x:0:0:root and bin bash signifies that the root user has a user ID, UID, and group ID, which is GID of 0, indicating super user privileges, and the home directory is root and the default shell is bin bash. Now why is this file crucial? Understanding its contents can be gold for hackers during an attack. It provides a roadmap to the system's user, potentially allowing unauthorized access to sensitive areas. Additionally, it aids administrators in managing user accounts. It's like the personal file in a company detailing roles and access levels. So in a real-world scenario, if an attacker gains access to the spy, they could target specific users, escalate privileges, or even create entirely new accounts, posing a severe security risk. And there you have it. False. We have successfully exploited the path traverse vulnerability, bypassed security measures, and gained access to sensitive files. So by looking this payload, you might be wondering what's with all those percentage and F characters. Let me break it down for you. So basically, this payload is essentially a carefully crafted set of characters that take advantage of how web applications handle file file paths. Imagine you are giving directions to your friend, but you include some secret codes to unlock hidden doors. So basically, let's dissect it. The %25f part translates, which is a way to move up one directory in a file system. It's like moving from your room to the hallway. The %25 is URL encoding for the person sign, and it helps us bypass certain security measures that expect a typical URL structure. So it's like a special key that fits into a unique lock. So the payload effectively becomes a series of move-up commands. Go up one directory, then another and another until you reach the root directory, which is like the base floor of a building. Once we are in the root directory, we specify ATC password, a critical system file in Unix and Linux systems. Now, why does this work? Imagine you are navigating a building with multiple floors and you find a way to jump directly to the ground floor without taking the stairs or the elevator. So this payload tricks the application into jumping directly to the root directory and accessing the ATC password file. But why does this specific combination work when others might not? It's all about understanding how the application processes input. The extra %25 in our payload ensures that the percent corrector is not decoded too early. It's like giving your friend a coded message, and the extra %25 ensures the message stays intact until it reaches its destination. Essentially, this payload is like a master key that can unlock specific doors in the application. It's carefully designed to bypass security measures, granting access to sensitive files and potentially giving hackers a gateway into the system. Picture this: developers are building applications, creating pathways for data to flow. They use file paths to define where information is stored. Now, the mistake occurs when the developers don't properly validate or sanitize user input. Imagine you are supposed to stay in your room, but the door does not have a lock. You can wander anywhere, right? That's essentially what happens here. So here's where the bug arises. When developers don't sanitize user input properly, attackers can insert special characters, tricking the application into going places it should not. So the traversal sequences, the paths the application uses to find files, get stripped down. There's a twist. The developers also decode the URL, Uniform Resource Locator, unnecessarily. It's like adding an extra layer of complexity that ends up backfiring. Imagine sending a friend a complicated set of directions. If your friend decodes it differently, they might end up in the wrong place. So that's what happens here. The unnecessary URL decoding confuses the application, making it vulnerable to attackers who cleverly manipulate these decoded paths. Now, let's talk about the consequences. Attackers exploit this vulnerability to access sensitive files like user or database or system configurations. It's like having a robber who can get into your house because your front door has a broken lock. The result is unauthorized access, data theft, and potentially a complete compromise of the system's security. So developers, the takeaway here is to be meticulous about validating and sanitizing user inputs. Don't just build doors with strong locks and unnecessary decoding. Avoid it. It's like simplifying a complicated set of directions rather than overcomplicating them. So keep your application secure and let's all contribute to a safer digital world. So delving into a critical topic, the file-powered traversal vulnerability, specifically focusing on a scenario where traversal sequences are shipped with superfluous URL decode. This is not just a theoretical concept, it happens in the real world and it's vital to understand why and how. Picture this: you are browsing a website, innocently clicking through its pages, but behind the scenes, there's a flaw in the application's code. Imagine you are walking through a maze and suddenly you find a hidden path that takes you straight to the center. That's what a hacker exploits in this vulnerability. Let me share a real-world scenario. Consider an online store. You as a user are accessing a product page. The URL might look something like this. Now, let's say the developers did not properly validate the product ID parameter and a hacker notices this and decides to get crafty. So they manipulate the URL appending our infamous payload, which is %25f, %same and etc. password file. So what happens behind the scenes is fascinating. The traversal sequences with 2 dots are used to move up directories and %25 ensures that the % character is preserved and not prematurely decoded. The application, in its attempt to be secure, decodes the URL, but here's the catch: it overdoses it. It strips away some of the traversal sequences, but not all, leaving a gap of vulnerability. So our attacker finds themselves suddenly at the root directory, like teleporting from the store's shelf directly into the manager's office. And what's stored in the etc. password file? User data, sensitive information. It's like accessing a company's employee records without permission. The impact, it's colossal. Think data breaches, compromised user accounts, and reputational damage for the business. Now the solution: proper input validation. Developers need to validate and sanitize user input rigorously. They should never trust users' supplied data and ensure that decoding and handling of URLs are done meticulously. And there you have it, a real-world dive into the dangers of file path traversal or a seemingly innocent flaw can lead to disastrous consequences. So exploring a specific vulnerability, file path traversal, but we won't just talk about it, we will dissect how the bug arises using real code examples. Let's get started. So imagine you are building a web application. Part of its functionality includes patching files based on user inputs. Now developers often use something like this in their code. So here's where the issue lies. The code naively concatenates the user input with the file path without proper validation. It's like allowing anyone to add a secret ingredient to our recipe without checking what it is. An attacker could manipulate the user input to traverse directories and access sensitive files. Let's say the user input is 2 dots, backslash 2 dots, backslash 2 dots, backslash with the etc password. Before any decoding, it translates to backslash an etc password file. So the application, in an attempt to decode the input, might convert the %2e%2e%2f to double backslash. But wait, it does not stop there. After the application's decoding process, the input becomes etc password. Now the code that patches the file might unwittingly allow this, thinking it's just patching a harmless file from a nearby directory. But the reality, the attacker has tweaked the application. It's as if someone handed you a disguised treasure map, needing you to believe it's ordinary directions. So how do we prevent this? By validating and sanitizing user inputs rigorously. In our code, it could look like this. And there you have it, folks. We have explored how this vulnerability arises, unrevealing the mystery with real code examples. We will explore how to mitigate file-powered traversal vulnerabilities and block malicious payloads. So grab your virtual toolkit and let's get started. Imagine you are the guardian of a digital fortress. Your goal: allow only safe, authorized access while keeping out any sneaky intruders armed with malicious payloads. To protect file-powered traversal attacks, we need rigorous defenses. One approach: input validation. Scrutinize every piece of data that comes into your application. If it does not meet your strict criteria, reject it. It's like having a bouncer at the door, ensuring only the right guest can enter your party. Let's say user submits a file request, something like that, etc. password. So your validating process should catch this suspicious input and deny access, preventing the traversal attempt before it even reaches your file system. Another powerful tool is whitelisting. Define a list of acceptable inputs or characters and reject anything that does not match. It's akin to allowing only specific ingredients in your recipe. If it's not on the list, it does not get in. Regular expressions can be your best friend here. Craft a rigid pattern that matches safe file paths and denies everything else. Think of it as a filter that sieves out impurities, leaving you with only the valuable data. Now let's talk about blocking malicious payloads. During penetration testing, tools like web application firewalls come into play. So webs can detect and block known attack patterns, acting like a shield that deflects incoming arrows. Additionally, intrusion detection and prevention systems, which is called as IDPS, can analyze traffic in real time. If they sense something fishy, they can trigger alarms or even block the suspicious activity, halting potential attacks in their tracks. As users, understanding these vulnerabilities empowers us. As developers, it's our responsibility to code securely and keep these virtual doors locked. Thanks for joining this eye-opening journey. Stay secure, stay curious, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.